Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been to this forum a few times now. The last time I was due to give a presentation, I happened to lose my voice 2 days before, and Robin stepped in quite ably for me. So I'm very pleased to be able to actually speak this time. But what I'm going to do today is just very quickly run through, for the first half of this, some elements related to BMC, but then I'm going to actually hand on over to Robin again, who's going to run through some geological aspects of what we're doing up here or what we hope to do and about the project. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the two First Nations on which this forum has been held. And there we go. So there's a few highlights that I'm just going to touch. There's a lot of information on these slides, and so what we're going to do is we're going to put these slides on our website. So I'm just going to whistle through. So I apologise if there's information up and then gone again, but you will be able to see it later, and of course our booth's at the back and you'll be able to have a chat to us. So we've outlined a few highlights here. We're obviously operating in Casca territory, in the southeast Yukon. We have what we think is probably the best undeveloped base metals project in the world that is owned, that is not owned by a major. That's a big statement, but that's my honest belief. We have, at a glance, the company, we are a UK-based company ultimately, but BMC Minerals, who I'm speaking on behalf of here today, is a Canadian-based company, and most of our staff are Canadian. Very experienced group, a management team, very experienced in exploration, very experienced in mine development and operation. As I said, our main assets are in the Finlayson district, and that district has yielded over the years multiple high-grade VMS deposits, which is why we're here, which is why we came to Canada, which is why we bought that project, and which is why we have consolidated multiple projects around that district. The proposal that we have on the table for a mine up there, this is not a new proposal. Caminco got a mine permitted there in 1998. That permit expired in 2018. BMC came along and found a new ore body, the Krakatoa lode, and we decided that we were going to re-permit a new and modern project. But the concept of a mine at the ABM deposit is not new. We have, over the last 12 months, brought on board 5 or 6 major players in the world who are going to take our concentrate for the first period of time, which is designed really to underpin our financing. The project itself, the original mine or the initial mine, will have a life of about 9 to 10 years, but I think Robin will take you through some of the reasons why we think that could be 12, 15, 25. And what we're hoping and what we expect is that is going to be a generational project. So by that I mean that it will provide economic benefits and opportunities for local communities in that region for a generation or more. That's our expectation. We haven't proved that yet. That's on us, but that's why we came here. Some of our partners, GNRI, are actually the management team of a private equity fund, Barclays Resources Fund. Orion have been integral in the development of the Victoria Gold Mine. They are one of our partners. Glencore, Trafigura, 2 of the largest concentrate buyers and smelter operators in the world. And what we've done quite deliberately is that we have set ourselves a task of selling our concentrate to smelters, not to traders. So we value and establish partnerships with reputable companies. This is part of our management team, some familiar faces, I'm sure. Look, everyone talks about ESG, environment, social and governance. I think BMC's credentials are strong, and one of the things that I think I'll get to in a minute is why is the greenhouse gas emissions and gas emission intensity, which I think is a very big feature of this project, and you'll see why I say that. The resources and reserves on this project, look, this is a high-grade project. It's one of the highest-grade unmined projects in the world. That's what VMS deposits are. And Robin might answer some questions about what a VMS deposit is and what the characteristics are, but they are high-grade projects that have high margins, and they are generally very successful projects, and we've got one of the best. Alex spoke very quickly about metal prices. There's a bit of a misconception about our project. We are not really a zinc project. We are in actual fact a true polymetallic, of which there are very few in the world. So 45% of our revenue would be from precious metals, gold and silver. 55, and depending on the prices, it might be 50, it might be 60% of our revenue will be from zinc primarily, and then copper and a little bit of lead. So, but you can see there on the left-hand side that graph is the zinc stockpiles over the last few years. Now, the world consumption of zinc is about 14 million tonnes per annum, and the world stockpile generally sits between about 300,000 and 800,000 tonnes at any one time, which is about 20 to 30 days. It currently sits at 2.5 days, and it would be lower than that except for the war against Ukraine by Russia, which has created the energy crisis and has required, has cut down a lot of consumption. But you can just see that that zinc is a critical metal. There's not a lot of it around, and our project will actually, in fact, when it goes into production, be the largest zinc producer in Canada. It will be the largest silver producer in Canada, and it will also be a significant copper producer in Canada. All three of those are either critical minerals or they're new technology minerals. And so really important that this project doesn't fall by the wayside. A lot of people ask us about the economics of the project, and that's fair enough. We've got 3 lines there, and the feasibility study that we did in 2019 and updated in 2020 are on the left-hand side. You can see the numbers for yourself. $400 million to build the project, US. It's going to create about 400 jobs during construction. It's going to create about 400 jobs during operation. Those are direct jobs on the project. It will also create about 400 indirect jobs, not just in the Yukon, but in BC and interstate, or inter-province, sorry. Got my jurisdictions mixed up there. But I would actually draw your attention to the right-hand side, and this is important. So typically speaking, and one of the reasons why we like polymetallic projects is that you very rarely get all the base metals going up and the precious metals going up at the same time. And normally base metals go up, precious metals go down, and if base metals go down, precious metals go up. Now, Alex has just talked about the fact that this seems to be a little bit different at the moment, but normally that is the case. And so what you find is that's a natural hedge on your revenue, which any business owner will tell you is a great thing to have. Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see that if you assume that all of the metals that we're looking to mine are at a 5-year low. Now, LME low is the London Metal Exchange, and that's generally the price setter for the world on the metal prices. But if all of our metals were at the low, which will never happen, but if they were, that's the Armageddon scenario, then this project still makes money. It still makes a 30% margin, which is any business owner will tell you that is a fantastic place to be. So the worst case scenario for this project is it operates well and operates right through the cycle, whether the metal prices are high or low. And that's why we bought it, off Alex, incidentally. In terms of benefits to Yukoners in Canada, look, this is a question that's always a hot topic. But these are the numbers from the feasibility study. They've been independently audited. We're looking for taxes and royalties, direct taxes and royalties. So this doesn't include the taxes paid by the suppliers and the businesses that will be working for us. Doesn't include the taxes paid by the employees. It's just the taxes paid by the company of about $540 million US. So whatever that is converted. So that is a big local benefit component. We've been in the Yukon for about 8 years. We've put a lot of effort into local content. Quite a significant proportion of our contracts go locally, and I'm sure everyone in here that has got a business knows that. We prefer to employ locally, and in fact our major contracts have a component of clauses 9 and 10, which actually requires not only us to employ locally, but our suppliers and key partners are also required in all of our contracts to support local. I mentioned GHG, Glow, greenhouse gas intensity. This is a graph put together by independently of us, which takes our feasibility numbers and compares them against the major projects in the world, or the major companies in the world who have issued data. So it's not our data, they've issued data, and this is how it came up. Now, this is a graph that shows basically the economic output of the projects against the greenhouse gas emissions per tonne. So we've done this on the basis of a copper equivalent. Look, you could use zinc, you could use iron ore, you could use water, you could use whatever it was. It's simply a measure of economic activity. And it just so happens that a large chunk of these companies mine copper as well, and BMC's got copper as well, and a lot of companies around the world are using copper. It's just a convenient mechanism, but really it is economic output versus greenhouse gas emission. And you can see that our project is going to be one of the lowest emitters per tonne of economic output in the world. And there's a lot of discussion at the moment about, in the Yukon, about mining intensity targets and things like that, and I just thought this might be topical. And I'm happy to discuss all of these things over at our booth later on today or tomorrow, and Robin and Ellen as well. Timelines and permitting. Look, there is a process in the Yukon. That is the process. We are part way through the process. We've applied for a water licence and Quartz mining licence. There's a lot of water to flow under the bridge. There's a lot of discussions that have to happen. There's a lot of consultation that has to happen before we get too far, before we get permitted or licensed. That is where we sit. Those are the broad timelines. We've done a pre-feasibility study. We've then done a feasibility study. I think everyone's well aware of our progress to date. This is the hot question that everyone gets asked: when are we going to start construction? And look, the truth is that we think that we've got at least another 18 months of discussion with regulators, discussion with the First Nations, consultation. There's a lot to do. Personally, I don't think that we're going to be making a decision to construct this before 2024, probably before the middle of 2024. So there's a lot of discussion to be had yet, but we are making progress, we are working through things, and there's a lot of discussions to be had. So I haven't put a date against the final investment decision, but we will make one eventually, I promise. And now Robin will step up and just talk about why I think this is the best undeveloped project in the world outside of the majors.
Thanks, Scott. As Scott mentioned, I'll give you a brief overview of our near-term exploration focus. For a more detailed description of the deposit, I would encourage you to seek out Nicola Denisova's recently published paper in Economic Geology, September's issue. She's a PhD student at MUN that we support. And for a regional overview, Matt Manners just published a paper in June of this year in Lithosphere, which has some neat new interpretations. So this is our land position in the district. Initially started with KZK there in the center, and the Pelly claims acquired from Teck, and then we've been consolidating the district a little bit as we've gone on. And this is Matt's updated stratigraphy. I just want to point out with that stratigraphy, we have claims over each of the mineralized packages within that stratigraphy. Within the district, as Scott mentioned, there are several known VMS deposits, and our total land package covers about 357 square kilometers. So, as many people in this room would have known, mid-90s, massive staking rush and flurry of activities in the district, spurred by ABM, Wolverine, and the Kona deposits. That's when ABM was fleshed out quite extensively, and then exploration trailed off in the late 90s. BMC purchased the project from Teck in 2015, and we really focused on 2 years of getting the project up to pre-feas and feasibility level studies. And then we turned our attention to filling out the baseline data around the project to give ourselves some meat on the bone to start really looking at where we can expand this to. And that includes some geophysics, detailed mapping, the PhD study that I mentioned previously, and some limited initial diamond drilling. So here's a property map, zooming in. You can see the prospective stratigraphy in the pink there. That's the Kuzakaya Formation, overlain by the Wind Lake Formation, some basinal sediments and some later mafic intrusions, and the Grass Lakes Plutonic Suite, which intrudes all packages. What I'd like to really point out here, we've got two objectives, is to increase the known resources in the deposit itself, and then start working outwards from the deposit in and around the proposed mine and mill. We have two productive horizons that are well constrained by Matt's work with some chemical abrasion TIMs, and that's the ABM in the upper portion of the stratigraphy and the GPF horizon down below. And then we've identified some cross-cutting structures that we feel are synvolcanic structures and form the locus of our focus. Inadvertent rhyming there. But we have about 10 really solid targets to date, multi-component targets on the property. But as I mentioned, I'm just going to zoom in to around the deposit where our near-term focus is. So here we have the ABM deposit in the shaded red, our Krakatoa discovery to the south of that. There's a major structural corridor that, again, we feel are synvolcanic faults, and were the locus of the mineralization and where it was focused at the time of formation. The colorful polygons you see there are basically just soil geochemical anomalies, multi-element base metals and pathfinder elements. And then on this map, we've got a proposed IP survey that we'd like to do in the summer coming up. Zooming in again, so a focus to the south of the deposit along that structural corridor. You see the polygon there as a copper bismuth high in soils. We use that as a proxy for high temperature fluid flow. What's not shown on this map in great detail is the intense chlorite alteration and outcrop of felsic volcanic rocks. Again, another hallmark of these feeder zones. We have intersected highly anomalous copper and zinc and intense alteration in some preliminary drill holes along this corridor, and we're pretty excited about it. There are some EM anomalies there, and again, the IP survey will help us focus our future drilling in that area. Moving to the other side of the deposit, so down dip, the deposit dips to the north-northeast, about 20-30 degrees, so fairly shallow dip. Again, pretty limited step-out drilling from the deposit itself, but where we have stepped out, we'd hit massive and semi-massive sulfide, strong alteration, and so there's really a lot of room to explore underneath that Wind Lake cover sequence. In addition, expanding the known resource down dip of Krakatoa, that's still open. And at the top of the screen here, you'll see we've got about 800,000 tons of inferred material that we'll look to convert and hopefully pull into the reserves. And that's pretty much the focus for the exploration for the near term and the end of the talk. I don't know if we have time for questions or if anyone has questions. Again, as Scott mentioned, myself and Scott and Alan are around the conference all week, so come seek us out.